everybody. Welcome to the 6th edition of the Harnish Metal Cast. I want to do something a little bit different for this episode. And if you know anything about me, you know that I'm a huge fan of the band Danzig, pretty much anything Glenn Danzig related. I'm not so much a fan of the Misfits and Sam Hain, but I do enjoy them still. Pretty much anything Glenn Danzig related, I'm going to love it, whether it's movies, which are super high quality, or comic books, whatever, you name it. Big fan of Danzig. So what I thought might be fun is to go through and rank my favorite Danzig albums, starting with least favorite to most favorite. So first, some ground rules. We're only going to rank the proper Danzig albums. So that means all the numbered albums 1 through 777, and then the albums that are not numbered by memory, that is Circle of Snakes, Death, Red, Sabaoth, and then Black Lady Crown. So what does that mean? It means albums like this, Growl, Demon Sweat Live, which are awesome. It's where you got Mother 93, but for my rankings, it's not part of what we're doing today. Danzig Sings Elvis. We wanted it for decades. It's here, not part of the rankings. Danzig Skeletons. Danzig doing covers of Aerosmith and Black Sabbath and more. Who wouldn't want that? You may say the production quality sucks, but there are no room for haters on this video. Either way, not part of the rankings. All right, this one hurts. Lost Tracks of Danzig, a 2-disc collection of unreleased Danzig songs. You've got everything on here from Pain is Like an Animal, more cuts of When Death Had No Name, Angel of the Seventh Dawn, Crawl Across Your Killing Floor. There's so much good stuff on this 2-disc set. It would definitely be a top contender for one of the best albums from Danzig of all time. However, it's not one of the proper albums, so not part of the rankings. Number 10, Black Laden Crown. The artwork is awesome, as always. But this is definitely my least favorite of all the Danzig albums. Just something about it didn't really click with me. I told you at the start of this video, I love everything Danzig related, and that's true. It's just this one just doesn't have the same appeal to me as the other albums. There are some tracks on here like Last Ride, which I think was originally going to be on one of the Walking Dead seasons, would have been a perfect fit. It is a really, really cool song, probably the standout track of the album, at least to me. There's a lot of really cool lead guitar work through the whole thing. There's another song on here I really love called Skulls and Daisies. It's very different, just kind of this weird, I don't even know how to describe it, Southern Cajun metal kind of thing. So definitely some good songs on here, just not as good as the other albums to me. Danzig 666, Satan's Child, coming at you. Tell you what, after Black Laden Crown, these rankings get a whole lot harder for me. But I had to put 666 at spot number 9. But even still, there was a time period when I was really obsessed with this album. It came kind of, after Danzig 5, which is more kind of an industrial, late 90s kind of sound. He eventually started transitioning back to kind of the more classic metal sound of Danzig, and 666 is somewhere in between those styles. Really some awesome songs on here: Five Finger Crawl, Belly of the Beast, Lilin, which is just so dark and brooding and badass. Cold Eternal is beautiful. Satan's Child is badass. And then Danzig also on this album, he wrote the song 13 for Johnny Cash, which is on one of the Johnny Cash albums, kind of an acoustic style song, but Danzig recorded his version of it on this album, just a full rock version, and it's spectacular too. So really hard to put this one at number 9. That's where she is. This is going to give me an ulcer from here. This is like trying to, pick which one of your children you love the most. It's an impossible task. But number 8, I'm going to put Danzig 777 I Luciferi. So I told you before that Danzig 6 was kind of a middle ground transition from the industrial sound back to more classic Danzig sound. Well, in the seventh album, comes that classic Danzig sound back. And it's got a whole bunch of really just killer tracks. Black Mass is one of my all-time favorites. Man, I Luciferi is awesome. Angel Blake is awesome. The Coldest Sun, again, is another one of those. It's a heavy track, but just one of those beautiful Glenn Danzig songs. There's even a version, one of those kids versions that you see on YouTube sometimes where they cover rock songs. They cover The Coldest Sun, and they did a tremendous job. I listen to that quite frequently. But ultimately, I don't know. I think just Glenn's voice was maybe kind of changing at this time, or some of the recording values were changing at this time. And what you love most about Glenn Danzig is Glenn Danzig's voice. And I felt like sometimes in this album, it just didn't come through quite strong enough. I will say though, at the time this album came out, myself, some friends of mine, we took a road trip to Florida, and we went and saw Glenn Danzig play at the House of Blues, I believe it was. It was an incredible show, incredible experience. We got to meet Glenn afterwards. He signed my copy of, I think he signed my copy of this album. It might be in here, but in any case, this album holds a special place in my heart, but it lands at number 8. Things are about to get a little controversial here, because at number 7, I'm putting Danzig to Lucifage. Yes, I know it's a classic. I know everybody loves it. I'm sure I am just asking for every Danzig hating internet troll in the world to attack me, and I am prepared, but I have to put Danzig 2 at number 7. The old saying that goes around the internet is you can't trust anything but the first 4 Danzig albums or something like that. So that's true. It's a classic album. It's legendary. Long Way Back from Hell, Snakes of Christ. I mean, it's probably one of the coolest opening riffs ever made. Killer Wolf, I'm the One probably ranks in one of my top 5 all-time favorite songs there is. There's a lot of really, really tremendous stuff on this album. But as popular as those songs are, Devil's Plaything, Her Black Wings, all that, I love it. It's just not my personal favorite of the collection of Danzig songs. And you have to remember that I discovered Danzig at a different time period. It was in high school, late 90s. The first song I heard from Danzig was Deep on the X-Files soundtrack, which we'll get to a little bit more in the further rankings. But so I kind of came in at a different time, and this album maybe doesn't hold as special a place to me as it does to some other folks who discovered Danzig sooner than I did. Killer album, but Danzig 2 lands at number 7 on my rankings. If the haters weren't coming for me before, by God, they're coming now, because at number 6, I am putting the eponymous, is that right? Eponymous first album from Danzig, Danzig 1. What can I say? I know this is pretty much considered to be a metal masterpiece, which it obviously is. People say it's a perfect album, start to finish. It's got James Hetfield doing some uncredited backing vocals and all kinds of cool stuff, and it's awesome. It's where you get Twist of Cain, which is again one of the coolest riffs ever. She Rides, Am I Demon, not one of my favorite songs, but I know a lot of people really dig Am I Demon. Of course, the original recording of Mother. It's an incredible album, but again, I have to go back to, I just came in at a different time to Danzig. I discovered Danzig through a different sound, I guess you could say. And while I do absolutely love this album, and I recognize its perfection and its timelessness, for me, Danzig 1 comes in at number 6. Number 5, Danzig, Circle of Snakes. That's right. We have arrived at the top 5 There are lots of people angry with me because I put Danzig in 1 and 2, not in the top 5. I'm going to get absolutely murdered. But this is where Circle of Sticks lands for me. So if you've ever gone to see Danzig live, at least in more modern times, you know that he usually opens the show with Skin Carver, which is after the intro track. It kicks off this album, and it's just like the coolest song ever to me. The opening riff is absolutely brutal. When you hear it live and it starts the show, you just absolutely go insane. I would almost put the album in the top 5 just for that song alone. It is so tremendous. But there's all kinds of cool things on here. Skull Forest is really, really wicked. Just one of those songs. I can't imagine anybody else pulling off something like that other than Glenn Danzig. It's about some dream he had or whatever. I don't remember the backstory, but really a wicked song. And then truly a masterpiece, probably one of the best songs in my opinion Danzig ever has written and recorded is Black Angel, White Angel, which ends this album. Again, like all the others on the top 5, this is a masterpiece. It's a little closer to the era I came in discovering Danzig, and this is number 5. At number 4 for me is probably what is considered to be the most disliked Danzig album of all time, which is Danzig 5, Black Acid Devil. So earlier again, I told you the first Danzig song I heard, at least that I'm aware of hearing, was Deep, and it was on the X-Files soundtrack. So Deep is not technically on the first release of this album. However, I think it was written at that same time period and recorded for it. There is a re-release of the album I'll show you in a little bit, which has a version of Deep. But that's what led me to Danzig. I discovered this album. Sacrifice was a song I became aware of soon after, and to this day, I mean, that's probably in my top 3, top 5 songs of all time. Just absolutely love it. Hint of Her Blood is so absolutely incredible. I was just trying to get my kids to listen to Ashes the other day, which is the song that ends this album, and Glenn's voice on that song just completely blows my mind. His range throughout the song, it is so dark, no pun intended, and so beautiful. I know there's a lot of haters for this album, but it holds a very special place in my heart, my discovery of Danzig, so maybe I'm biased. But at number 4, I am putting the absolutely killer album, Danzig, Black Acid Devil. Oh my goodness, we are in the top 3, so very fittingly, I'm going to put Danzig 3 at number 3. So as I told you, I discovered Danzig around 95, 96, Black Acid Devil, the X-Files soundtrack, and I kind of worked my way backwards into Danzig's catalog and body of work, and that's where I discovered the more kind of crooning Danzig that everybody's familiar with. Danzig 3 is obviously that. Man, I really got into this album. Tons of replayability. How the Gods Kill. I know I say this about every song, but that's got to be up there in like my top 5 favorite songs of all time, right? Dirty Black Summer rocks. Left Hand Black rocks. Heart of the Devil is bluesy and it rocks. Do You Wear the Mark? Hello. Like, who could not like Do You Wear the Mark and say they like rock music? It's absolutely insane. Almost every track on this is good. Like the cool thing about songs like Anything and How the Gods Kill is just Danzig just has that special talent of starting off a song beautiful and melodic, and there's something almost pretty to it. But then as the song progresses, it just devolves into madness, and by the end of it, it's ripping your face off. And I hope you hear some of that influence in my music, but Anything, How the Gods Kill really embody that for me. This album is fantastic. It has tons of replayability, and it's a classic. Danzig 3 at number 3. Number 1 and number 2 was an absolutely brutal decision for me to try and decide which is my favorite. But at number 2, I am putting Danzig 4, or 4P, whatever you want to call it. Again, working my way backwards from Danzig 5, this is one of the first ones I listened to after. I have this vague memory of, and I hate to make myself let everyone know how old I am, but being in a Blockbuster Music and listening to this album, and I remember kind of not liking it at first, or at least thinking I didn't like it. The memory is very vague. But anyway, I purchased it still, and I don't know if it grew on me or what happened, but I mean, this is up there, not just Danzig, but my favorite albums of all time. This is probably number two for me. Just I don't even know where to start. Brand New God just comes in as the first track, and it just absolutely melts your face off. And then in the middle of it, there's just this totally classic, legendary Danzig John Christ riff, with Glenn just kind of crooning over it in this weird, off-key, strange line about, being your brand new God and taking you there, and it's like the most evil thing ever. And it just doesn't stop from there. You've got Little Whip, you've got Can't Speak, which I still absolutely love that music video. It used to play on MTV. The special effects maybe seem kind of dated now, but Glenn standing there in a kind of weird CGI spinning thing, and his eyes glowing with electricity and the black, absolutely fantastic. Until You Call on the Dark, I could just listen to on loop. Bringer of Death, same thing. And then, Always Let It Be Captured is just, in my opinion, one of the most beautiful songs ever written. It's just, I know it's kind of flat, and I don't know, but it's everything Danzig to me, and I'm not articulating that well. But if there's a song that I think I always used to say it's got to play at my wedding, it can play at my funeral. But Let It Be Captured is, man, one hell of a powerful song. My favorite song on the album, and Danzig 4 comes in at number 2. That means there's only one left. Here we are at number 1. Now, I don't know if you thought when we started this little journey together that this is the album I would arrive on, but it is Death Red Sabaoth. Where do I even begin? So this is a later album in the Danzig catalog. Obviously, it's not one of the numbered albums. Glenn, I believe, went through and tried to source like a lot of original instruments and amplifiers and things from the 70s or early 80s, and replicate some of those sounds so it's not just running through a computer and that type of thing. And it truly turned into something that is just special. And also for me, like when I was growing up, and these albums were coming out from your favorite bands, like you were waiting for them with like this great anticipation, and it was this huge deal. And I don't know if it's that way for you kids anymore, but it was back then. And I was at a pretty low point in my life, going through some things, and this album came out. I had been waiting on it, and it was everything I needed to hear at that time. Completely remotivated me, brought me out of a funk in my life. Hammer of the Gods opens this album, and it's just such a brutal, just hard track. I have to come back to Black Candy, but On a Wicked Night is amazing. Death Red Moon is amazing. Night Star, Hell, Seasons of Pain, Left Hand Rise Above. I mean, it's just a masterpiece from the first track to the last track. Black Candy, like I mentioned, I don't know that there's a Danzig song that is any cooler to me in his entire catalog. It is hard, it is heavy, he plays the drums on it. The vocals are incredibly evil and sexy. Kind of a special song to me and my wife, but just wow. Can't say enough things about this album. It, hands down, Danzig 4 was a run for its money, but I'd almost say no contest. This one ranks as number 1 for me on my list of all-time favorite Danzig albums. So before we go, I'll show you a couple other cool things from my personal Danzig stuff. Seem to have lost the case, but Live on the Black Hand Side is a really cool Danzig live album. Again, you kids might not remember this, but back in the day, we used to have CD singles or album singles on cassettes, right? So you'd usually get a single if you just wanted one song off the album or come out before the album to get you hyped up. But I had two versions of the Sacrifice singles, which is a bunch of remixes of Sacrifice from Danzig 5, Black Acid Devil. There was a time period I worked at FYE in the mall, and they used to give out little promo things, and I can't remember. I had these Unspeakable singles for Danzig 6, and I can't remember if like they were promos that I got to take home or if they were singles I bought, but I don't see a lot of these around. Pretty cool to have. I actually got a Dirty Black Summer single from Danzig 3. Super, super sweet. Some alternate covers. Danzig did some re-releases later on, like Danzig 1 through 4 was all tied up through Deaf America and Rick Rubin, and after a certain year, Danzig got the rights back or something like that. So there's some re-releases with alternate covers of Black Acid Devil. There was a different one, which also, like I said, includes, I don't think it's, yeah, this one includes Deeper on it, so it's kind of a remix or maybe the original version of the song Deep from the X-Files soundtrack. I'll block it out. A little bit of nudity here, but Danzig 666 had an alternate cover for Satan's Child. So really cool. And then if you've never checked out this song, I'll say her name wrong, but Melissa Ofjermova, I'm not really sure. She has this album out of the, I think it's Out of Our Minds. But Danzig does a duet with her on this album. The song is called Father's Grave. I'm not usually too into duets, but man, it is a beautiful song. They go back and forth about how he killed her father or something like that, and it's a spectacular song. So if you want to check out some kind of different Danzig stuff on the outskirts, that's one I would definitely recommend. But I've really enjoyed my time with you. Let me know in the comments if you're into Danzig and a huge Danzig fan like I am. What are your personal rankings? Tell me your favorite albums or anything and everything Danzig. Love to hear from you. Take care.